the Gajapati dynasty is born.
I swear to protect this land.
Lord Jagannath, I am but your humble servant. In the 15th century, the Indian subcontinent was a patchwork of grand and powerful kingdoms. Witness the dawn of a spectacular, lost golden age.
For the Sultan! Advance! Guard the gates, for the night approaches. The night approaches! Behold, my friend, the finest silks and spices, straight from the Malabar coast. Our kingdom stands strong, carved in eternal stone. Our borders are weak, we can afford a war. We will not yield. Our kingdom's future is forged in strength, not fear.
Every drop of sweat builds a kingdom. Gajapati does not yield.
By the grace of Lord Jagannath, I take this sacred vow to protect this land and its people. As the sun shines upon us,
A new dawn rises. The Gajapati dynasty is born.
I swear to protect this land under the watchful eye of the sun.
In the 15th century, a new power rose. Emperor Kapilendra Deva led his legendary Gajapati army. Lord Jagannath, I am but your humble servant. Guide my path and protect this kingdom. I dedicate my life to your service.
In 1434, the Eastern Genga dynasty was in a state of terminal decline. The royal administration had largely collapsed, and with the sitting king away on a southern military campaign, the kingdom was effectively leaderless. This power vacuum was filled by a military coup. Kapilendra Deva seized control of the capital, ending the old line and placing himself on the throne. Local folklore describes him as a beggar child protected by a divine cobra, but military records reveal a more practical origin. Kapilendra was an established lieutenant in the army who utilized his command to secure the crown. This seizure of power triggered immediate internal resistance. Several regional vassal kings refused to acknowledge his authority, openly declaring their independence and launching a series of rebellions. Kapilendra inherited a fractured state. He was surrounded on three sides by hostile empires, each preparing to move in and dismantle his territory. To the north, the sultanates of Jaunpur and Bengal were mobilized and actively preparing for a full-scale invasion. Along the southern coast, the Vijayanagara Empire was aggressively pushing its borders upward into Odisha lands. To the west, the Bahmani Sultanate held the Deccan Plateau, completing a geographic encirclement of Kapilendra's new kingdom. He faced a choice between total collapse or launching a simultaneous 360-degree war against every superpower on his borders. Kapilendra moved first to secure his interior. By 1440, he had systematically crushed the internal rebellions, using his veteran troops to force the local kings back into submission. He formalized his control through the Lingaraj temple inscription, issuing a decree that nobles who defied his authority would face total banishment and the loss of their property. With the center stable, he looked north. He tasked his minister, Gopinath Mahapatra, with leading the defense against the Jaunpur and Bengal forces. His military power relied on a massive deployment of heavy cavalry. Historical accounts claim the Gajapati army fielded a force of 200,000 war elephants, a blunt force tool used to break enemy formations. This force successfully overran the Gauda region of Bengal, pushing the border past the Ganges River and absorbing new territory into the empire. By securing the northern front, Kapilendra created a stable base that allowed him to turn the full weight of his military toward the south and west. He exploited a succession crisis in the Vijayanagara Empire to launch a southern offensive. Prince Hamvira led the advance, systematically dismantling the coastal defenses. The Gajapati forces captured the strategic forts of Rajamahendri and Kondavidu, seizing control of the region's most formidable stone fortifications. As the southern front expanded, Kapilendra pivoted west into Telangana. He intervened to support local Velama chiefs who were being pressured by the Bahmani Sultanate. After a decisive victory at Devarakonda, his forces marched deep into Bahmani territory, launching a direct assault on the massive red stone walls of Bidar. This expansion continued until the Vijayanagara capital was forced to pay tribute to the Gajapati throne. By the end of these campaigns, Kapilendra Deva had redrawn the map of India. He had forged an empire that stretched from the Ganges in the north to the Kaveri in the south. His new status was reflected in his imperial title, Lord of Gauda, Karnata, and Kalaburagi, marking him as the undisputed master of the coast. Following his military victories, he focused his administration on domestic welfare and economic stability. He protected the livelihood of his subjects by abolishing the chowkidari tax, preserving communal pasture lands, and legally prohibiting nobles from overtaxing the public. He also catalyzed an Odia cultural renaissance, establishing the Odia language as the official medium for government administration and regional literature. This period of peace and patronage allowed the arts to thrive, leading to the development and codification of traditional Odissi dance. This widespread benevolence secured his reputation, transitioning the former military usurper into a legitimate and widely supported monarch. He solidified his standing through his religious identity, adopting the title of Raurai, the servant king of Lord Jagannath. To honor this role, he funded massive construction projects at the Jagannath Temple in Puri, including the building of the towering white spires and heavy outer defensive walls. He redirected the spoils of his conquests into the temple's treasury and public endowments, funding social and religious infrastructure. Kapilendra Deva did more than just survive the geopolitical pressure of 1434. He used that conflict to forge the cultural and geographic identity that defines modern Odisha today.
How exactly did Kapilendra Deva get his start? Was he this divinely chosen beggar, or was he a calculating, highly trained military genius who simply struck at the perfect moment? You see, the source text actually hand us two completely contradictory stories about his rise to power. And honestly, untangling this contradiction is absolutely crucial to understanding the guy who would eventually rule a kingdom stretching all the way from the Ganges down to the Kaveri River.
Section 1. Myth versus historical reality. Okay, so we've got these two perfectly contrasting narratives. On the one hand, you have the romantic folklore of the Mandala Punji, which paints this incredible picture of destiny. It describes a young cowherd named Kapila, shaded from the sun by a divine cobra, who was later found begging outside the Vimala temple in Puri before being adopted by the last Eastern Ganga ruler through a literal divine dream. It's your classic, epic underdog myth. But then, you look at the Raghudevapuram copper plates, which, by the way, were issued by his own nephew, and they tell a much more pragmatic story. They show Kapilendra was actually born into a highly established military family. His grandfather was a Nayaka, a lieutenant in the Ganga army, and his father, Jagasarara, already commanded a massive fleet of elephants. So he wasn't exactly a beggar off the street, he was a deeply entrenched military insider.
Section 2. Crushing rebellions and seizing power.
What we do know for sure is that he didn't just sit around waiting to be handed the crown. Taking full advantage of a visibly weakening Eastern Ganga administration, Kapilendra staged a brilliant coup while the last ruler, Banu Deva IV, was away on a southern military expedition. He gets himself officially crowned on June 29, 1435, right in Bhubaneswar. But, as we all know, seizing a throne and actually keeping it are two very different things. A bunch of vassal kings flat out refused to acknowledge him. His response to that? Absolute overwhelming force. He literally had a stark warning etched into the stone of the Lingaraj temple itself, basically saying, accept my rule or face banishment and the total loss of your property. By 1440, every single internal rebellion was totally crushed. The Gajapati Empire was officially on the map.
Now, to really grasp his grip on power and how he commanded such immediate, terrifying authority, just look at this staggering number, 200,000. That is the number of war elephants he commanded, at least according to the Muslim historical text, the Burhan Mensir. To put that into perspective for you, a force of that scale was practically unheard of for any single kingdom in India during the 15th century. This wasn't just a standard army, it was an earth-shaking military machine. And get this, the elephants were just the vanguard. Historical accounts by Nizamuddin note that Kapilendra Deva's infantry, when encamped on the banks of the Godavari River, numbered 700,000 soldiers, just an unbelievable volume of military might.
It gave him an unprecedented advantage, allowing him to project power across vast distances and, crucially, fight multiple enemies at the exact same time, which, as we're about to see, wasn't just a flex, it was an absolute necessity for his basic survival. Section 3. Wars on multiple fronts. Because literally from the moment he took the throne, the guy faced a geopolitical nightmare. He was entirely boxed in by hostile powers encircling Odisha. Up north, you've got the Sultan of Jaunpur and the Sultan of Bengal constantly preparing invasions. Over to the south and west, he's staring down the Bahmani Sultanate, the incredibly powerful Devaraya II of the Vijayanagara Empire, and the Reddys of Rajmahendri. Any normal ruler would have been instantly crushed under the pressure of a multi-front war against both rival Hindu and Muslim empires. But it is a massive testament to Kapilendra Deva's strategic genius that he didn't just survive this trap, he systematically took it apart. He deployed his highly capable minister Gopinath Mahapatra to lock down the northern lines against Bengal and Jaunpur. That one move freed Kapilendra up to personally direct his main forces exactly where they were needed most. Section 4. Consolidating the Gajapati Empire. So he doesn't just play defense, he brilliantly flips the script and goes on the massive offensive, pushing his borders out in every single direction. Up north, his forces beat back the Sultan of Bengal, pushing deep into the Goda region and capturing the fort of Garmandaran. He even adopts the title Gojeshwara, literally Lord of the Goda Kingdom. To the south, he spots a weaker successor over in Vijayanagara and sends his eldest son, Prince Hamvira Deva, to conquer Rajamahendri and Kandavidu. And out west, he wrests control of the Mahur fort in Telangana right out of the hands of the Bahmani Sultanate. He really relied heavily on his son, Hamvira, for this. This father-son military duo was practically an unstoppable force during these campaign eras. Look at how systematic this subjugation of the south was. It basically followed 3 calculated steps. First, he orders Prince Hamvira to strike directly at the heart of the Vijayanagara Empire, capturing its imperial capital and forcing its emperor to pay tribute. Then, from that foothold, they push even further south, conquering Udagiri, which they actually turned into their southern military headquarters, along with Chandragiri. And finally, they didn't stop pushing until they reached way down to Trichinopali. Through these incredibly bold moves, Kapilendra Deva secured his ultimate title, claiming mastery of an empire that now stretched all the way from the Ganges in the north down to the Kaveri River in the south. Section 5. A Golden Cultural Legacy. Now this is where it gets really unexpected. For a guy who basically spent his entire life waging war, Kapilendra Deva makes this fascinating transition from warlord to a genuine welfare state builder. He starts issuing these strict warnings to his own officials, demanding they follow the path of justice and righteousness, and flat out threatening them with exile if they oppress the common people. He reduced taxes, he abolished the Chowkidari tax paid by Brahmins, and he explicitly banned the seizure of waste and pasture lands. He clearly understood that a massive, sprawling empire couldn't be held together by just elephants and swords alone. It actually required administrative justice and focusing on the welfare of everyday citizens. And honestly, this is what you really need to take away from this explainer when we talk about his lasting impact. Beyond all the borders he redrew, Kapilendra Deva engineered a massive cultural renaissance. He was the very first to make Odia the official administrative language, which firmly gave the region its distinct linguistic identity. He heavily patronized writers, most famously Sarala Das, who penned the monumental Odia Mahabharata during this time. And his architectural footprint, it is still highly visible today. He built those massive defensive walls, the Kurma and Meghanada Prachira, that still protect the famous Jagannath temple in Puri right now. He also built the grand Kapileshwar temple in Bhuvaneshwar. He effectively cultivated this golden era, where drama, literature, and dances like Odissi completely thrived, right alongside his relentless military campaigns. So, we're going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. In November of 1466, Kapilendra Deva died on the banks of the Krishna River. He had successfully built the absolute most powerful Hindu empire of his time from the ground up. But in a wildly controversial move, he bypassed his legendary warrior son Hamvira and instead chose his youngest son Purushottama to succeed him. And as you can probably guess, this single decision instantly sparked a bitter, violent civil war. So we have to ask ourselves, a brilliant warlord builds this unstoppable, magnificent empire, but did his final succession plan ultimately do it to collapse from the inside out? It really makes you think about how quickly the greatest of historical achievements can be threatened by the simple stroke of a pen. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer, and we will see you next time as we continue to decode history's most fascinating source materials.